Dear viewers, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click on the bell to be the first to know about new releases. And here we go. There are themes in romantic affairs that easily fall into a pattern. Who doesn't dream of hooking up with a girl in a nurse's costume? What girl hasn't fallen in love at least once with her teacher who is old enough to be her father? What guy doesn't secretly dream of two twins and all those plumbers and drivers and firemen? The fantasies don't count. But what happens when some of them start pretending into reality? My life story from last summer will tell about such unexpected and pleasant little things. My sister and I were born twins, Camilla and Agnes, two sisters, two identical faces, but we are different in character like night and day. Agnes, who is 2 minutes older, has always been a fighter, demanding and loud, and I was the humble, quiet one who liked to stay in the shadows, but who cares? It seems like 2 drops of water. We had heard nothing but what we had heard from everyone all our lives. Fortunately, our inclinations turned out to be similar. And by different roads, we came to the same decision to go to medical school here in general. All and parents and just acquaintances have immensely smiled and anticipated as we would look in white coats. The guys in our group had a slightly different idea of beauty. That is not so the ideas are the same, but under the text, they have more frank. You can't imagine how many times we were approached with the modest suggestions to spend an evening in good male company. My sister and I always treated this with humor, and several times we arranged divorces so that it would be unforgivable for girls to offer all sorts of nonsense. We never seriously considered such a possibility. What would it get us except embarrassment? Agnes had a boyfriend and I was thinking more about studying, and to be honest, our taste for men had luckily never been the same, except maybe on one occasion. A professor from the university came to our anatomy class. He was far from young, in his 70s at a guess. But what a great guy he was. He had polished shiny boots despite the mud and slushy streets, a fine wool suit and a polished wooden walking stick, either for gloss or for support. He explained the material magnificently. All the students, even the most unserious ones, listened with their mouths open in the middle of the class. Agnes turned to me and with one lip rolled her eyes and said, "What a man." I could only nod in agreement, blushing with embarrassment. Robert Smith was old enough to be our grandfather, but no one would call such a man an old man or an old stump. Everything about him was noble and beautiful, as if the man had stepped into our audience from another era that winter. He substituted for a teacher who had been sick for a long time. But when she recovered, we stopped seeing him, which brought my sister and I and all the students in our group. Great grief! Several years have passed. The story was forgotten. We graduated from college and were assigned to a city hospital. It was necessary to begin in the autumn, and we, on reflection a little, had decided to work in summer and country sanatorium. It was situated rather far away from us, almost 200 kilometers away, in the middle of a picturesque forest next to a lake, a real gem of nature. We already imagined how we would run, bathe and walk in the evening in our free time, especially since there was nothing to keep us in the city. Ag has stayed with her next suitor, and I never bothered to start a relationship except for a little high school romance that left me with nothing but heartbreak. I never had anything with guys. My parents helped with the suitcases and bought us compartment tickets, proud of their medical daughters. They wanted to buy the whole ones. But there were no more seats. This upset us a little because we secretly brought a bottle of wine and planned to drink it to the movie. But there was nothing to do when our parents left and we got comfortable. There was a polite knock on the door. It opened a little, and in the opening there was an elderly man in a pressed suit with a small suitcase and a cane in his hands. My sister and I looked at each other because we immediately recognized him. It was our favorite teacher. "Hello, Robert Smith." Without talking, we said hello together. The man smiled affably and answered, "Hello, ladies, Agnes and Camilla. If I'm not mistaken." We were very surprised. Teachers with so much experience rarely remember students' faces, much less their names. "Yes. Do you really remember us?" "I always remember the names of pretty girls," half bowed. The man replied, "and all more. So when there are two of them," we laughed. "Really? It's about time we got used to our own conspicuousness." The journey was going to be a pleasant one. The professor politely inquired about our studies, our assignments, and where we were going. When he learned the name of the sanatorium, he marveled, but a small world. After all, I'm going there on a voucher to rest for a month, a magical place. We call wife almost every year vacation there. But the last 5 years I did not go. Too many memories. We sighed sorrowfully and tried to move the conversation to another topic. Robert Smith's stories about medicine were hilarious. A couple of hours later, the conductor knocked on our compartment and embarrassed asked, "Excuse me, the neighbors are complaining. Could you please keep your voice down?" The man immediately apologized for us, although he was not laughing. We laughed until we cried and asked to bring us a glass of tea. That's when we remembered the wine. Strangely enough, the man got a fresh cinnamon and a huge orange. The summer was cool that year and all the ingredients literally screamed, mulled wine. We decided to go with our gut, and the hot beverage was the perfect accompaniment to the movie. We sat down to watch without making too much noise. "Pardon me?" "Ladies," said the man, only now loosening his scarf with one finger, "but your main character is a weak-willed wimp." Is that really the ideal of modern girls? We shrugged our shoulders. I guess you have to choose from what you have said. My sister, what's the point of dreaming about a not excessive night on a white horse? If in reality, a meeting with him, to put it mildly, it is unlikely. You most importantly do not settle for less, and everything will come in due time for men and women. In my opinion, time goes differently. Sighed. You're an outstanding cavalier at your age, and I'll be like a rotten tomato in 20 years. So, advice is good. But you're not entirely objective here. Robert Smith looked at me carefully, and then he leaned over and touching my knee just a little bit. He said, "Don't be so down on yourself. Now, you are a delicate and young flower, and in my ears, you will be a steel prickly rose. Every season has its charms." Although the remark sounded like the most delicate compliment, the touch stirred a storm of emotions in me with one finger. How is that possible? I must have blushed a little because my sister was looking at me without looking away, as if she were trying to impress some kind of thought on me, but I couldn't get it, and the touch lasted, stretching for a few moments of eternity, colored by the heat that washed over me. Finally, Agnes lost her patience. "Excuse me, my sister and I are going out for a minute." She grabbed my hand and pulled me into the vestibule. "Do you see where this is going?" she asked in a whisper when we were outside. "No," I babbled, blushing even more. Kamala Agnes rolled her eyes mockingly. "You'd think you didn't like him?" "Yes." But I started. "Listen." My sister interrupted me. "He just touched my heel with his palm." My eyes practically pop out of their sockets. So surprised was I. "Well, if this is the way things are going to go, you don't mind, do you?" she asked in a softer tone, and I caught the hope and even the request in her voice. "Yes. Don't worry. I won't bother you. You silly girl." Sister smiled condescendingly. "He invited both of us. I'm not like that. And it's embarrassing. He's a teacher." Sighed I. "Relax. For once a kid, the world will not collapse. Strangely enough, I nodded in response though. I had not yet fully decided what I would do. We returned and continued the casual chit-chat which with each turn seemed to pull us into an invisible vortex. Pretty soon, Agnes was in the arms of the professor while I still sat modestly on the sidelines. At that point, the conversation had just begun about the experience of lovemaking. My sister, with a slight raise of her eyebrow, hinted at me, "Camilla. Ours has almost nothing to say on the matter for a girl. Lack of experience is more laudable than reprehensible. And yet it is such a pity that you limit yourself to the pleasures of life," said the professor. He put his hand on my leg again, but it was a different touch, more frank and no less inviting. It was hard for me to resist him, and my relaxed brain found no reason to do so. I got up and closed the latch on the door to say aloud, "I would not have dared, mistress." "Do not lose your temper," said the old professor. "I am not a young man, but an experienced one. Let me show you something special today," and he showed I'm not a great expert on this subject, but let's just say you don't have to be an astronaut to comprehend the infinity of the universe. And if a man has hands, a brain, and such an incredible knowledge of anatomy, there really are no barriers for him. We too delighted the teacher as much as we could in the morning under the sound of the wheels. I passed out and slept peacefully until the first morning light. I woke up to someone gently touching my waist. "Beautiful Camilla. Good morning to you. I will get off at the nearest station to see an old comrade. But in a few days, we will definitely meet at the sanatorium." He winked, put on his hat and disappeared out the door. I woke up and told her what had happened. My sister rolled her lips out a little, and I could tell she was feeling a little resentful after all. Before that, all the guys clearly preferred her. But this must have been a very special case as we got off the train at the station. A and I looked at each other, winked at each other at the same time and laughed, and I wasn't expecting anything like that from this job. Sister exclaimed. "And what a wonderful way to start the summer." "It's a great summer," I remarked. Usually reality is a lot worse than in my dreams. But this is clearly not the case. That's powdered. Why can't all men, especially young and attractive ones, be like the professor? Whatever you want. I laughed, and then we